We're good. Good evening. I'm Jack Stein of the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District Rate Commission. I will be presiding over the public hearing this evening. I am joined tonight by my fellow commissioner, Bill Clark. The charter plan of the district was amended by voters in St. Louis City and St. Louis County at a general election on November the 7th, 2000, and established the Rate Commission. The purpose of the Rate Commission is to review and make recommendations to MSD's Board of Trustees regarding changes in wastewater rates, stormwater rates, and tax rates proposed by MSD staff. The Rate Commission seeks to ensure MSD ratepayers and the public in general have a voice in MSD's rate-setting process. Per the charter plan, the Rate Commission is composed of 15 member organizations who collectively represent the broadest possible cross-section of MSD customers and the community it serves. Rate Commission member organizations are selected by MSD's Board of Trustees through a public self-nomination and selection process set forth in the charter. Each member organization serves a 6-year term and appoints an individual to represent the organization on the Rate Commission. Per the voter-approved changes made to MSD's charter in 2000, the Board of Trustees shall elect member organizations so as to ensure a fair representation to all users of the district's services. Specifically, Rate Commission member organizations shall represent commercial industrial users, residential users, and other organizations interested in the operation of the district, including by way of example, but not by way of limitation, organizations focusing on environmental issues, labor issues, socioeconomic issues, community neighborhood organizations, and other nonprofit organizations. For a list of individual rate commissioners and the organizations they represent, please visit the Rate Commission section of MSD's website at www.msdprojectclear.org. The Rate Commission received a rate change notice from MSD staff on March 24th, 2023 for wastewater rates and stormwater rates and taxes. Per the charter plan, the Rate Commission must issue its report on the proposed rate change notice to MSD's Board of Trustees on or before September 5th, 2023. The Rate Commission adopted operational rules and a procedural schedule to conduct its proceedings in a timely manner and with procedural fairness to all parties. Since the rate change notice was received on March 24th, 2023, the Rate Commission has received testimony from MSD staff and the rate consultants employed by the Rate Commission to evaluate the MSD staff's proposal. The parties have also engaged in discovery requests. Documentation of these activities is listed on the Rate Commission section of MSD's website at www.msdprojectclear.org. Tonight's public hearing is one of 14 on-the-record sessions planned for between June 21st, 2023 and August 7, 2023. Any ratepayer who wishes to be heard on the proposed rate change may testify or participate in these public sessions. The public hearings are publicly noticed via postings to the Rate Commission of MSD's website at www.msdprojectclear.org. These postings contain the time, date, and location of each of the public hearings. As hearings are added to the schedule, the same information will be posted. Public hearings are held for the purpose of permitting MSD staff to present its wastewater and stormwater rate change proposal to the general public and to permit said public the opportunity to ask questions and or make comments. Those unable or not wishing to provide comments at a public hearing may provide feedback to the Rate Commission via phone or email. The phone number is 314-335-2028. Again, the phone number is 314-335-2028. The email address is ahcconsulting.com. A card with the contact information is available at the sign-in area. Alternatively, staff representing the Rate Commission, who I will ask to identify themselves shortly, I think I already have, this is Mr. Clark, will also be able to provide that information. Further information on how to provide feedback outside of the public hearings is listed on the Rate Commission section of MSD's website at www.msdprojectclear.org. Our next step tonight is a presentation by MSD staff, followed by a public comment period. Tonight's presenter is Brian Helsher, MSD's CEO and Executive Director. Before we begin the presentation, though, I ask that we observe the following housekeeping rules. Please hold all questions until the comment period after the presentation. If you wish to present testimony or expect you may have questions or comments, please sign in at the door by which you entered the room. Speakers will be called upon in the order they have signed up. Each speaker should identify themselves and any organizations they represent. While not a requirement, we ask those that are speaking to state their name and address so that we may ensure that we are associating comments in the record with the correct speakers. If you are representing an organization, please provide information about the organization. If speakers wish to remain anonymous, in whole or part, we respect those wishes. Each speaker may have a maximum of 10 minutes to speak regarding the proposed rate change. As the presiding officer, I can limit or expand speaking time as deemed necessary. If you have further questions regarding bathrooms or any other logistics, staff representing the Rate Commission, staff, please raise your hands, are available. If you have not already done so, please silence your cell phones. Are there any questions regarding the procedures for this evening? Seeing none, Mr. Helsher, please begin MSD's presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner Stein. Again, my name is Brian Helsher. I'm the Executive Director and CEO of MSD. I'm going to present on the rate proposal. Some of you may have questions that aren't involving the rate proposal, very specific things to your properties, your bills. If you have those types of questions, I've got staff back here on the left-hand corner. Once we're done with this presentation, they will stay as long as it takes tonight to either answer your question or take your information and make sure we get back to you. We want to make sure we provide as many answers as we can tonight. Let's see, it's this. Oh, what did I do? Why they don't let me near technology. I don't even know what those are, but okay. We're good? There we go. Okay. So there's three parts I'm going to cover today. The first one's called the Tale of Two Systems. We're actually two separate utilities, two different services. I want to describe what that is in general. Then I'm going to talk about the rate commission and the rate proposal process. So you know what's going to happen as we work our way through to an April 2024 election. And then I'm going to discuss the rate proposals in detail, specifically what's going to be done, what the choices are for the voters, and what the financial impact is of those votes. There we go. So first of all, MSD Project Clear protects the public's health, safety, and water environment by managing two programs with separate funding sources. There's a wastewater program and a stormwater program. The wastewater program gets funded out of the monthly bills that you get that are based on your potable water usage. That funds the wastewater program. The stormwater program is based on the property taxes you pay annually on your annual property tax bill. Those funds are not interchangeable. Only those funds can be used for those purposes. There are differences, again, in the way they're funded and how consistent the funding sources are. That's going to be important as I talk forward, and I'll make sure everybody knows which one I'm talking about so we can make sure we can keep the pots in the correct place. Current services, the wastewater system. Again, this is paid for by your monthly bill. Clean and repair the existing wastewater system. This is the sewers that carry wastewater, not stormwater. We make sure we're in compliance with environmental regulations. And the biggest part of that program right now, thank you. There we go. The biggest part of that program now is major improvements. In 2011, we entered an agreement with the Department of Justice, the EPA, and the Coalition for the Environment, like over 200 other communities throughout the United States have entered into, in order to meet the Clean Water Act. MSD has always been making improvements since its creation to meet the Clean Water Act. This agreement, however, the strategy by the federal government was to set a date certain when you had to be completely caught up. So that's what the negotiations were about, is how fast do we have to do that? And therefore, we have a plan. Right now, our consent or agreement started in 2011, and it's scheduled to be completed in 2039. It drives everything we do on the capital program. Again, this is the wastewater side. Over the next 4 years, 98% of the improvements are either to meet the requirements of that agreement or meet other environmental regulations, such as the Clean Air Act. There's only 2% that we're using for some kind of preventative maintenance. Biggest part of the cost is, again, through that agreement. Where we stand right now, by the end of next year, we'll have the program right now is valued at $7.2 billion in today's dollars, 2023. You may have heard we continuously update that number to bring it to current dollars. So right now it's 7.2 billion. As of the end of next year, we'll have 3.1 billion completed. This next rate proposal will do 1.7 billion. That'll put us over halfway to the mark. And then we'll have an additional 2.4 billion remaining in order to complete the program by 2039. Stormwater is a little different. Remember, stormwater is funded through your property taxes. There's 3 services that MSD is allowed to perform in stormwater. One is, I'll go to the middle one there, compliance with environmental regulations. Ever since MSD was created, there's been a 2-cent tax, a property tax charged to individuals. We serve as a regulator. We issue permits similar to a building permit type process in order to make sure we address the pollutants that are in stormwater runoff and pollute the creeks and streams. That's currently funded and is currently operational. Cleaning and repair of existing storm sewers. Now, remember, our service area is the city of St. Louis and the county out to about 109 in Wildwood. So prior to 2016, there was limited amount of funding inside of 270 to operate and maintain the storm sewers. These are manholes, inlets, and storm sewers. Outside 270, MSD was given those assets in 1989 with no funding. So we own the assets, but there was no funding to maintain those. In 2016, we went to the voters. That was corrected. The voters put in place a property tax that allowed us to now operate and maintain the storm sewers throughout the entire district since 2016. The final one is funding for new improvements primarily to address flooding and erosion that does not involve MSD-owned assets. Again, the two big ones are flooding, especially now with the way we've gotten and how rainstorms have changed over the last about 15 years in the area. Everybody, I'm sure, has experienced, I know you did last summer, the 100 and 500-year storms that are coming through the area and dumping a lot of water in a short period of time and causing overland flooding in the entire area. And so we've obviously had flooding of a more normal nature that we've been tracking before that, as well as erosion. So the best example for erosion is Coldwater Creek up north. Those homes are built and the banks of that creek are such that you usually don't have water coming out of Coldwater Creek, but you do have enough water coming down that's eroding the creek and in some cases threatening the homes adjacent to that, whether it's their swimming pools, garages or homes threatening to fall in. So that's the erosion part of what we're trying to resolve. There is no district-wide funding for that. We're trying to get funding so MSD can participate. Again, we aren't the floodplain managers. We don't own the floodplains. We don't own the areas that flood. We don't own the creeks where the erosion's occurring, but our charter does allow us in an area-wide fashion, regional fashion, to collect funds and work with the various communities who also have responsibility to get things done. So, you know, the last time we tried this was in 2019. It has some funding, so MSD could participate in this. The voters voted it down 53 to 47. So based on input from the voters, we're going to try again. We've learned a lot. We've heard from the folks who did vote certain things and changes they thought we'd make that would make it more attractive. We included those in that proposal, and I'll present that to you this evening. Wastewater system, now I'm back to what you pay for with your monthly bills. Reduce wastewater backups into homes and overflows into the environment. That's the main purpose. Those are both contrary to the Clean Water Act. Our St. Louis area had a place where the wastewater system, which was only supposed to carry wastewater, also stormwater was getting into it. Kirkwood, Webster were good examples of where homes were built. The roof downspouts were not connected to the stormwater system when they were built. They were connected to the wastewater laterals. And so what was happening, the wastewater system, every time there was any kind of significant rain, was either flooding the homes that had those connections or else flooding their neighbors. There were also inlets that were connected to the sanitary system instead of the stormwater system. The pipes had been in place for a long time. They were leaking and groundwater was getting into them. So that was what we wanted to correct. Both is to stop during those types of storms. Let's call them what the normal storms used to be 20 years ago. Take care of those, make sure that those stop having backups. And the other thing to do with the heavier storms was to try and prevent basement backups. Holes would be formed in the side of manholes next to creeks. So when water got into the system, instead of it getting high and going into homes, it would just get discharged to the creeks during high river. The idea, we think at the time, was it's better to have the creek, when it's full, get some of this flow instead of the homes. Those are all illegal. So part of our big effort has been to make improvements so that we can eliminate those overflows that are intentionally directing wastewater flows with stormwater in it to the creeks during high river. That will keep us in compliance with the Clean Water Act. That on the wastewater side is what we have to get done by 2039. The methods we do it, we do put some system capacity in. The biggest one is to get the stormwater out of the system. Whether that's removing those downspouts I indicated, getting incorrect connections taken care of, or else lining and improving the sewer so it's groundwater and such doesn't get into the wastewater system. We're in a pretty good place there. That was on the front part of our consent decree. I'll show you later, but we started with 230 in 2011 of those holes in the system that discharge water to the creeks. By the end of this year, we'll be down to 30. And that was the main focus of the front part of the consent decree, of the agreement on the wastewater side. And I've kind of jumped the gun, but here they are. So those separate system wastewater overflows, we've reduced them by 84%. Again, we're down to about 30 by the end of this year. Building backups are down 25%. For the types of rains we normally considered when we started this program, that would actually be quite a bit more. With the climate change impacts and what we're seeing happening to the environment, it's one thing to keep stormwater out of the wastewater system. It's another when you get so much rain, you get complete overland flooding. Not only do homes, streets, and yards go underwater, but the wastewater system goes underwater as well. So that's causing additional basement backups, and that's something we've got to move forward. And we also need to try to address during those what used to be rare events and now seem to be pretty regular events affecting the area. And again, on the wastewater system, this year we've either completed or in the process of completing 650 projects since we started in 2011. What do the stormwater problems look like? Again, we keep collecting issues from the residents. That's where we find the stormwater problems. You can see on this chart what the number of problems looked like, what our backlog was in these various time periods. It keeps going up. The main driver at the time was there are a few small areas where we had a little bit of funding. We would always get comments from those folks who were not in an area we had any funding at all. They would simply stop calling us because they knew MSD itself wasn't provided any funds to address those problems. So the question is, what do we do with those? What do they look like? Stormwater problems, again, there's two of them. There's backyards flooding. Sometimes somebody's done something to block it up. Sometimes right now we're getting the heavier rains are just simply beyond the capacity of the natural or constructed systems, and the people are flooding. That's what we mean by stormwater flooding. And then erosion is something like this. Folks who live along creeks and streams, that extra flow that's coming through, and a lot of it's really accelerated with the climate change type storms we've seen. Simply the creeks are not up to handling that amount of water for that period of time, moving that fast, and eventually causes erosion. The problems, and again, I'm on the stormwater side by watershed. So on the lower, kind of the lower right hand, I guess it's the light pink on this. That's where most of the problems that we have identified. There's 264. That is also the area where the small taxing districts are right now that we get a little bit of work done. We would expect to have the most problems there. But if you take a look at the numbers, we are getting complaints on stormwater issues throughout the area, throughout our entire service area. If you're looking at that map, up to the north is the Missouri River. To the right is the Mississippi River. The Merrimack works its way along the bottom. And again, our boundaries on the far left, there's about Highway 109 that's running through Wildwood. So the process, I'm not going to go through this. Commissioner Stein went through it, but we do have an independent rate commission that takes a look at what MSD is proposing. That rate proposal and all the proceedings are on our website if you want to see. It is a trial type process. You'll see testimony, cross-examination, exhibits. You can see the entire process as well as the rate proposal itself. The schedule, this starts in 2023 is the left-hand side, but I'm going to start in 2022. So in the summer of 2022, MSD staff started putting a rate proposal together. Now, every 4 years, we do a wastewater rate proposal because we do our proposals in 4-year buckets. We go to the rate commission, say, this is what's got to be done this 4 years. And so we prepare that, come back to them, and come back to the voters to decide how to pay for it every 4 years. Remember, by agreement, the work has to be done. We have a federal judge watching us, making sure we get it done on their schedule. We gave them that rate proposal in March of this year, and they will complete it by September, both the wastewater and stormwater proposal. When they're done in September, they'll give it to our Board of Trustees. Our Board of Trustees will review the recommendations of the Rate Commission, what their recommendations are to staff's proposal, and the board will decide how to proceed. That will result in an election in April 2024. There will be two things that the residents will be asked to do. First of all, and I'll go over this in detail later, on the wastewater side, starting the summer of 2024, there is one proposal that says if you want to pay cash for those $1.7 billion worth of work that is start for the next 4 years, here's what will happen to rates. If you want to approve, in this case, an additional $750 million of bonding authority for MSD, something else will happen to the rates. That is, for those of you who paid attention, we've been coming to the customers every 4 years for about 15 years now, offering them that option to tell us which way they want to pay for the program. Stormwater is a little bit different. If the voters vote no, we will just simply maintain the existing system. For a large part of the district, there'll be no funding. And for a few small parts of the district, there's limited amount of funding that's from some old taxes that were developed in the 1960s. If they vote yes, what we will do is we will keep those old taxes in those small areas in place through 2024, set them to zero, and starting in 2025, we will put in a district-wide revenue source I'm going to describe later that'll collect about $34 million a year to start addressing flooding and erosion throughout the entire district. And next is what everybody came for. So I'm going to start with the stormwater rate proposal first. Remember, this is the revenue that addresses the flooding this past summer, the flooding over Mother's Day, the last 15 years where we've seen little pop-up 100 and 500-year storms in Chesterfield, Baldwin, North County, Kirkwood, South County, City of St. Louis. Those are the things we're talking about. What we wanted to do is make it equitable between the non-residential and residential customers, how much revenue we collected. So we measured the impervious area on those two different types of customers, impervious area being rooftops, driveways, sidewalks, things where water doesn't soak in. We figured that would show us what distribution of the revenue should be. So based on that calculation, the residential customers have about 57% of the impervious area. So we set up a method to collect 57% of the revenues from the residential customers. Commercial customers are non-residential, therefore that left 43%. They'll be collected in a different way based on impervious area measurements of the non-residential properties. You add them both together and you'll end up with $34 million a year in planned revenues if this passes the voters. So again, I explained there's two parts for the residential customer. As we did in the past, one of the things we've done is polling is if we were to put something in place district-wide to address flooding and erosion, which we don't have right now, how much would folks be willing to pay? Based on surveying, and this has been pretty consistent, the answer has been about $2 per month. So what we've done is we've set a rate of 7.45 cents per $100 valuation property tax that for the median valued home in our service area of $176,000, the cost for the new program would be $25 per year on your property tax bill. For the non-residential customers, again, there's an impervious rate for them. Through aerial photography, we'll measure how much impervious area they have. Per month, they will pay $1.05 per 1,000 square feet of impervious area if this passes starting in 2025. And that'll result in a collection of $34 million. Now, there's something to keep in mind, and Kirkwood's a good place to have this discussion. I've mentioned a couple times a few small taxing districts that exist throughout the district. They're legacy things that were set up in the 1960s. They're located between 270 and the City of St. Louis boundaries. I think all of Kirkwood is currently in one of those. Right now, the residents in Kirkwood, for a limited amount of stormwater service, are paying a 6.6 cent property tax. If this passes and we institute the 7.45 cent property tax, that other tax will be sent to zero, and you will not be paying that. We're exchanging one program for the other. So you pay a slight bit more, but then we'll be collecting a much larger pot of money and get much larger projects done. For the city of Kirkwood, since I knew we were presenting here tonight, I took a look and tried to find a good data point for people to reference. So if this passes and you own a $500,000 home, the cost to you would be $10 per year on your property tax. You're kind of exchanging one program for the other. Now, we have a big part of the district that isn't in that situation. They'll be paying the full $25 per year for $176,000 assessed valuation of their property. But that's what it will, what I just explained is what it would look like specifically for Kirkwood. As far as what's the problem look like, we have $700 million of problems before the big storms starting last summer. So it's obviously bigger than that. Again, what we're proposing will generate a revenue of $34 million, really based on what the public has told us they're willing to spend for an annual program. Now, one of the things we've changed besides the way we bill is where we spend it. So the proposal is to take 50% of the revenues. MSD will do a priority system. Right now in those districts, we do a benefit cost analysis. We take a project and determine what the benefit points are. How many homes are you saving? How many swimming pools, yards, how much of the yard, garages, fences, the whole thing. So we will total those as a benefit. Below that will be the cost. That'll give us a benefit cost analysis. We will rank every known problem in the district's boundaries. And we'll simply start from the one that has the highest benefit cost ratio. We'll start working our way down the list. Those list of projects are in our proposal. We've already identified over the next 4 years what projects would get done if this rate proposal passes. 30% of the program will go to grants to the individual municipalities based on population. Right now, with those small taxing districts, Kirkwood is participating in that program now. It gives us a chance to not only go after the bigger stuff or more regional stuff that MSD sees, but allows a set of revenues for the individual municipalities to do their own prioritization. So again, it'll be based on population, and as long as it involves stormwater, by whatever priority system the individual municipalities want to put in place, there'll be 30% of the revenues based on population available to municipality annually to address whatever stormwater problem they think is most important. We've got 10% of the program going to, using the federal term, environmental justice areas. The state has a different term having to do with low income or can't remember exactly what the state term is, but the state provides mapping to us, and we use it primarily during grant applications to determine where the low income or underserved individuals are in our area. That map is in the rate proposal, but it's the north part of the city of St. Louis, North County, move to the west, and then there's an area to the south of the city down in South County. What we will do is we will take only the projects in those areas, run them through the same benefit cost analysis, and then we will simply do whichever one ranks out first. We will do those, and we'll use 10% of the revenues towards that program. The last one is for things that don't get covered or really need to get done in the area. So we're saving 10% for a regional discussion on priorities and policy. Right now, we've had initial discussions to make sure there's an opt-in with the municipal league, which represents all the communities here, and we would add the city of St. Louis in. We would have those 3%, 10% of those revenues go towards, should we be doing something else? What should we be doing? Since it's recent and we've had some of these storms, would it be a good idea to provide a fund to start buying people out of floodplains, which are flooding all the time? Maybe that's a good use of the money. Should we use it to enhance the grant program to the municipalities? Is that the best place to put it? Should it go towards some kind of flooding insurance program? I don't know what it will be. The idea is to go to the public, ask them what they think is the best thing to do with those dollars. The idea is to meet once every 1 or 2 years, whatever turns out to be appropriate, and to determine based on a regional basis, kind of a policy decision, what are we missing that really needs to be addressed? And then that would be the way we would spend those 100% of those stormwater revenues that we collect. Wastewater rate proposal. Again, we're in the midst of a $7.2 billion program. You have heard some different numbers and people interpret it different ways. We intentionally report the cost of the program in current dollars. When we signed this agreement in 2011, we used 2010 dollars. The value of the program was $4.7 billion. 2021, we had the staff revalue it based on 2021 dollars. It went to $6.1 billion. That's because of inflation. You're bringing it up to the current dollars. After what we've all experienced in the last 2 to 3 years with the economy, we knew there was a big jump. Prior to doing this rate proposal, we revalued it again. And right now it's valued at $7.2 billion in 2023 dollars. That doesn't mean the program's more expensive. It doesn't mean something's gone wrong. We are on budget and we are on schedule to complete all the work. But we just continuously revalue this project based on the current dollars. That also gives us a comparison of what got done. Again, we know over the next 4 years, we'll get past the halfway point and we'll be about halfway through the CD schedule. The question that's going to go in front of the ratepayers is, how do you want to pay for $1.7 billion of new work over the next 4 years from 2025 to 2028? You can either pay for it with cash, or you can agree to an additional $750 million worth of bonding. It's in many ways what you would do if you were going to buy a house. So if you had, like us, to buy a house every 4 years, you can either pay cash every time you buy a new house and keep it, which we're doing, or you can decide that you want to go ahead and borrow the money and pay for it over time. One's cheaper up front, but you pay more money at the end. The other, you take care of it. The next chart I'm going to show you is what that means. It's also on the back side, or one of the sides of the flyer you have. There's a chart, and that's what it looks like this. And this is really the guts, the dollar guts of what we're going to present, what we're offering. The left-hand side assumes that the voters approve an additional $750 million worth of bonding authority for projects to be started between 2025 and 2028. If the public says yes to that, then in 2025, there will be a 7% increase, 2026, a 7.6% increase, 2027, a 7.5% increase, and then 2028, a 6.6% increase. To the right of those percentages is the monthly bill for the average MSD customer. There's a good chance that none of you are an average MSD customer, but we've put the dollars up there. The best thing you can do is take what you currently pay monthly, apply those percentages in your individual instance, and you can see what the proposal would be, happen to the rates, your monthly charges over the next 4 years. The far right is if the public decides not to vote yes for additional bonding authority. Again, you're paying cash for the projects as they come online. So the first year would be a 35% increase in rates. Second year, another 35%. Because of the way the program works, the next year will be a 20% decrease in rates. And then finally, a 5% increase in the last year. And again, we've taken on the far right side what the monthly charge would be for the average MSD customer. Again, I would recommend just simply taking whatever you pay monthly, applying these percentages if you just want to see what the impact is to you individually. There's some things I want to touch base on here, not shown up on the charts. So I am talking, these numbers are applicable to those whose water gets metered, your water usage. If it does, we take the 3 winter months and we assume that's what water goes down our into the sewers, and we charge you for the full year. There are customers in the city of St. Louis, that's not the way they are billed for water. They are billed based on the attributes of the homes, the number of water closets, the number of bedrooms, the number of living rooms, the number of different types of spaces. There's a charge applied by the St. Louis City Water. Per the Missouri Supreme Court, we have to use water data to develop our charges. So we take those attributes, we apply a flow to them. And that's how we bill folks in the city, residential customers who do not have a water meter. Now, with that, what we do is we occasionally check and just see what are estimates of water usage for those attributes, how accurate are they? We did a study this year, we presented to the Rate Commission. Based on that study, what you see on, I'm just going to use the one on the left-hand side with if the voters approve bonding, instead of a 7% increase the first year, the city of St. Louis will see a negative 0.8%, a 0.8% decrease the first year. But then the raises in 2026, 2027, and 2028 will occur. we'll make the adjustments in the first year to bring them to the results that came out of the new study. The second part is we do have a customer assistance program for those households whose income is less than 2 times the poverty level. They can apply for that program. They would pay 1/2 of the calculated monthly charge for wastewater. For those of you who are defined as elderly like me, if you are 62 or over, there is also a program that sets that program at 2.5 times the poverty level. If you're below that number, then you also will be able to, you can make an application, you would pay 1/2 of the monthly charge. So I'm going to leave these contact names up here as we move forward to questions. But Commissioner Stein, my presentation is done.
Thank you, Mr. Holscher. We're going to take just a minute to reposition the podium here. Commissioner Clark, do you have any questions? No. All right. In that case, Rate Commission staff, will you please announce those who have requested to speak? Those wishing to speak, please remember to state your name and address for the record, and if you represent an organization.
So, Mr. Stein, 5 members of the public signed up to speak this evening. The first speaker is Ed Golterman.
Golderman.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners Jack and Bill. I am not the 5-generation Goltermans of Kirkwood. I'm a latecomer, kind of a usurper, and most of them have moved out. My name is Ed Golterman, 542 Woodell Court, down off of Woodbine, if you're familiar with that. I walked that up tonight because Talby Roach is killing our bus transportation. So I'm a rather angry senior citizen, and I'll try to temper my anger. Brian, is it?
Yes, sir.
The work must be done. That's easy for a judge to say, but I'm saying we're not paying for it. And the other thing I'd like to, and again, to confirm that some of the entertainment enterprises downtown pay no water bill. Maybe you can look into that. Places that were Kiel Auditorium and then the Opera House. And I'm just wondering, please look into that, because probably that would give you a good chunk of your $700 million. Elder abuse is alive and well in St. Louis County. And I would like to have seen a visual up here, elder abuse, and then we talk about the financial and other very, very painful, continuing, never-ending sufferings that various agencies put on senior citizens. They don't seem to talk to each other much, in my estimation. Another visual I'd like to see is alternate funding. If all this has to be done, I would like to see some alternate funding that might even preclude even a 5-to-1 loss on your next election, whenever that might be. Did you go for COVID relief funds, like about 50 million? They gave the Regional Arts Commission 10 million to spread out among theaters and artists and museums. Well, that's very nice, but this is critical stuff here. So I don't know that. You can't answer me, but how about 50 million from the city? The city is flooded with money. I mean, they bragged a $200 million surplus. Take 50 million from them. This is pretty important. The zoo museum tax, county residents put 100 million a year, every year, into the zoo and museums who don't need our money. They're money processing machines. They operate day and night. So take half of that. That would be 50 million. The Ram settlement money. Now, don't laugh. Don't laugh. The Ram settlement money, it's sitting somewhere. I would look into that. And then if you assess the last decade, the money that the owners of the Blues made from 2010 to 2019, the money that they made, they admitted they made a profit of 300 million. It's closer to $1 billion. And the sewer district did a lot of special work and has done a lot of work for those sports enterprises that now have, come up to Jefferson Avenue and going north. So I think perhaps some of those billionaires could well kick in some money. So I'm suggesting that it is burdensome to go to the public, especially senior citizens. We are hit, if you look at all the people that are taking money out of personal property and real estate, and you go to the store and you buy something, it's 10, 12, 14%. For me specifically, again, I don't have a car, so I'm a bit restricted in how I can get around. You all have cars. I think my landlord will probably raise my rent if this should, go. And then I have other problems to deal with then. No, I speak for no one. You have one angry senior citizen right here. And the citizen, I think, is going to have some T-shirts made. The work must be done, but we're not paying for it. Now, I finished what I have to say. I'm open to back and forth. It all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Golderman.
Chairman, I got, I think, some answers to, not to the comments, but to the direct questions, if you'd like them.
Please do.
So these are the three I picked up. Understand that MSD is a separate municipal corporation formed by the Missouri Constitution. We are not part of the city. We are not part of the county. So that's just the starting point I want to start with. First of all, yes, we were eligible as our special status for COVID funding. We took advantage of all that we could. All COVID funding, mostly around cost and expenses of COVID. So we did do that. Not the city or county. So understand the city and county are separate, just like Kirkwood, separate municipal entities from MSD. So if they decided to assist, I guess that would be good. In my opinion, I know they have their issues and that's never been offered and we're not, quite honestly, not looking for it. The big one was on special development. Understand that for MSD system, every time somebody develops, be that tear down a home and build a bigger one, put in a sports stadium, anything like that, they pay for all the infrastructure that's required for us to serve them. This is in our charter. Our charter specifically keeps, unlike other utilities, we do not go out and put systems out for people to hook into. They have to build the systems per our requirements. And then once it's done, then they have to turn those over to us for operation and maintenance. So anytime you see a development happening, our ratepayers are not paying for that. That's being paid for by the individual development. So those are the three facts I pulled from your comments that I thought I wanted to offer. Yes. Yes, they do.
Mr. Stein, the next speaker is Ruth Ann Edwards.
Thank all of you for being here tonight. I am a resident of the city, 5027 Winona, and my name is Ruth Ann Edwards. At least you're listening to us. The city just hiked our water bill incredibly and they had no hearings. They had no anything. They just did it. And not only that, as I understand it in there, whoever is in charge of the water department can now raise the rates whenever they want without asking anybody for anything. And so I am not just angry. I'm very scared. I'm going to be 70 in August and the bills keep going up. And I make enough money that I don't fit with the poverty rate schedules. But I'm very concerned that I'm going to wind up living in a box out on the streets because I just don't have the money. I work with a financial planner and originally I was going to be able to retire at 70. Then things went up and it was 72. Now we're talking 74. Something was going to be done by 2039. I won't be alive in 2039. And if I live on the streets, I probably won't survive for very long. But I don't know what to do. One of the questions I have is when I go around, I see advertising for MSD, Inspire, and Ameren, and all those. They're all monopolies. Why are they paying so much for advertising? It's not like you have a choice to go somewhere else. So couldn't some of that money be cut? And Mr. Galterman brought up the Rams. I didn't hear anything about the money from the Rams settlement being used. I had a question about that. Not to take money out of your pocket, but CEOs make an awful lot of money, a whole lot more than I do. And do those salaries have to be so incredibly high? Or is there a way just to exempt people when they get to age 70 or 72, or freeze their rates at what they were the last day they worked? And their rates stay that for the rest of their lives. It seems like that would be a very fair way to do it. You don't have to reduce it, but do you have to increase it? And so I guess those are my questions at this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Helsher, did you get down all those questions?
Yes, I have the comments. I don't necessarily have any factual statements to go along with.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Stein, the third speaker is Susie Phillips.
A way to link in so I could show a video or no? Is there like anybody where you can plug in? Is that possible? Okay, I'll just pass my phone around. My name's Susan Phillips. I live at 541 Goethe or Goethe Avenue in Kirkwood. I bought 32 years ago. I have a house next door as well. I pay approximately $24,000 a year in taxes. I have had my home flooded continuously for 32 years. I have gone on the news, in 3 newspapers. I have tried everything I can. I have tried to work through the system. There have been 3 projects slated for that corner, but they didn't have enough money and they needed to wait for a bond issue. We passed the bond issue and yet again, no job done. So that what happens is the street floods, it goes across my yard and it floods around, I don't even know, but hundreds of thousands of gallons of water into my 2 homes. I've been trying to sell the house on the corner for 2 years in the highest market in history, and no one will buy the house. 4-bedroom, 3-bath for $400,000 because nobody wants a house that has a swimming pool 2 times a year for the last 32 years. So I'm going to send around so you guys can see what I'm talking about. It's not a little bit of water, it's a lot of water. In the latest flood, which was August 11th, August 11th, I had flooding for 5.5 hours in 2 homes. I called MSD, they did nothing. I called the city of Kirkwood to try to get help. Mayor Swoboda was helping me when he was unfortunately killed. Other than that, I've had no help from the city of Kirkwood. I had the engineer, is he here tonight? City engineer of Kirkwood. I lost 2 cars in that flood that were not covered. I didn't even get the measly $2,000 that theoretically they pay you for a loss. They didn't even pay me for that. They are shysters. And as you rightly picked out, there's no competition. I live alone. I work 2 jobs at 68 years old. I make about $75,000 and I pay $24,000 a year just in taxes and can get no help, 0 help. It's a sin. It's horrible. I have to disclose this to anyone who looks at my house. I have to say, you're going to get up to 4 feet of water in your home, nothing you can do about it. I've spent in 1998 and again in 2007, I replaced my entire driveway and garage because it had been eroded by the water and it did not help. I have done everything. I brought in engineers from Washington University. Nobody can figure out how to stop this because the street floods, the sewers collapsed apparently in 1990, 89, 90. They know they're flooded. They know they're collapsed and they will not fix it. There's one sewer line. If you know Essex, you come down from all the way before this high school to where the Magic Market is, there's two sewers right across the street from my house. On the other side of the street are all the houses, the 500 block. There used to be a runoff there. And in the 60s, they filled that in and built houses. So now all their water runs into the street too. It's ridiculous. And everybody knows it happens. The fire chief, when I went to talk to him, he said, I can't even get down your street. It's so full, it's so heavy. I mean, I have video after video after video since 1992 of this happening. It's a sin. It's terrible. And MSD has now used COVID that you can't even get in anymore to speak to anyone. I know the person at the billing department by name. I've tried to get appointments with the engineering department. The man I was dealing with died during this. That's how long I've been dealing with it. A man died. I mean, it's Jim, whatever's that last name began with a B. He was a very nice man, but he did nothing either. So my point is, you want more money? Fix what the hell is wrong now and fix it for us, the people that have been paying. I bought my first house in 1977 and I'm still paying for nothing. It's bull.
Thank you.
Chairman, if you don't mind, I'll give some facts.
Please do.
So this problem has never been a question of funding, of bonding. There isn't any bonding that MSD's ever put out that would solve the problem you're talking about. It's a stormwater issue. It's an issue. Sure, we have projects because as we've tried in 2008 and got turned down, 2019 and got turned down, we make projects because we've identified problems. And every time we think we're going to go in 2019, when we went to the public, we said, here are the list of projects. I don't know if your project was on it or not. So the sewers are working. They're not collapsed. Right. They're not, they are working for what would be a normal storm. You get the, okay. Okay. That's your type of problem is what this would fund. We've never had a district-wide funding source to address the problem you're talking about. They have a limited amount of funding to address what's there. Again, I'm not the city of Kirkwood, but your type of problem that you're talking about, I'm very familiar with your site. My son used to live near there. You're right, that area, pardon me? True, and I'm familiar with where you're talking about. That's the type of problem we're proposing. And this is the 5th time we've tried to get this funded. We tried to use state bonds. The bonds went away. The state doesn't sell bonds. The Supreme Court stopped us. The public voted no in 2019. We're trying now to get funding to address those types of issues. We have never had funding for those. So that was a stormwater funding to meet specifically an agreement requirement with the federal government. We spent that money in order to not have to spend more later on. No, those funding would not be available for the type of problem you're talking about. We put green infrastructure in place in order to decrease the pollutant runoff. That was one of the requirements in our agreement.
Mr. Stein, the 4th speaker is Michael Burton.
Hi, thank you all for being here and giving us this time. And thank you to the Metropolitan Sewer District for being here. My name is Michael Burton. I'm a state representative for District 92. Most of my concerns and questions are going to be for the department, but I appreciate you all having this event. I do want to address a few of the things that have been brought up here because I think they're so important and I don't think that everybody is fully informed. I heard the gentleman talk about why can't we charge the billionaires to pay for this stuff? And last year, the state legislature that passed the largest tax cut rate for the millionaires and billionaires in the state, and the governor signed it. And the bottom third of income earners basically got nothing. I also have a bill that I proposed called the Homestead Act, which would help with property taxes. We used to do it. It expired in 2010. And unfortunately, the Missouri legislature, the House, would not let that bill be heard in committee. So there are solutions out there, and it depends who you have in office and who's cutting taxes for billionaires and who's trying to give tax cuts to senior citizens on fixed incomes. Some questions, if you can write these down. I want to know if these monies are going to be used for mostly in general fixing current problems, or are we going to see a good, and I know I have your layout here, but my one concern, I just want to double check, is that we're not going to be using this money to fund new spaces, new developments, to reduce possible flooding in the future from new places. We heard about the COVID relief, but what about the infrastructure bill that President Biden passed? Is there any way we can use some of that money? And something else everybody in here should know is the state of Missouri is currently sitting on $6 billion just sitting in the bank in Jefferson City. It's the most the state of Missouri has ever had in its history. So the money's there, but I'd like to know about the infrastructure bill. Also, to you all, would you say that one of the problems that you have is a developer wants to build someplace and they come in here for rezoning for a housing development or whatnot, and we have elected officials that approve it, and pretty much the Metropolitan Sewer District just has to deal with whatever it is. We heard where they built houses up on a hill and now all that water runoff comes in. That's true. What can you all do about that if elected officials are just letting these plans go through? And how much input do you have when they're doing the rezoning? Another concern that I have is it looks like all these public hearings have happened in incorporated places, and District 92, where I represent, is unincorporated, South St. Louis County. We're not a low income district. We're also not a very wealthy district. We're kind of in the middle. So I'm curious how much unincorporated St. Louis County is going to get paid attention to in this. And I think that's all I have. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Brian?
So I think I have all the questions. So none of the funding goes to new places so they won't flood. That was, oh, there you are. So as we stated before, they have to take care of those situations when they develop. You're right. The actual building, zoning, plan review has to be done by the individual municipalities, except we have full control. We have rules and regs. If they do that development, they cannot change the runoff patterns. Since we've been in charge of it, they cannot change the runoff patterns or volumes coming off those developments, whether it's through detention basins, green infrastructure, some other kind of storage. So we're able to do that. Now, we haven't always been in charge. A lot of things in place were before MSD's creation. MSD didn't take over that particular part of the program until 1989, if you're outside of 270. But since those have been in place, MSD does have a right, and we do those. As a matter of fact, if you're going to do something and there's an excess flooding somewhere, we'll have you do something extra. That's put on the developer. MSD does not have its ratepayers pay for that. Sure. So the way this works is we can't tell them you can't do it there. Our statement is if you do it there, here's what you got to do. Sometimes that kills projects because it just becomes too extensive. So we do have that authority. The one place it doesn't happen is as long as they do all the right stuff, we can't keep municipalities from developing in floodplains. They have a way of doing that. We put provisions in place, but we can't stop that. As far as funding, being a special district, there are different access to funds, and every one you've listed, we have access to in some way. Our biggest source of funding, there's something called the State Revolving Fund. It is a subsidized loan program where 70% of the interest rate is subsidized by the federal government through the state. We participate in that. That happened before all the additional funding came through. The ARPA dollars, there's also, a program called WIFIA, Water Infrastructure Financing Investment Act. We can borrow money directly from the US Treasury at rates lower than if we go out to the market. Rarely, and my Secretary of Treasury is here, rarely do we have, most of our borrowing comes through those subsidized programs. Rarely do we go to the market on our own. That helps decrease costs. That's what's available to us. The ARPA funding was the next one on the list. The way the state set the program up, we don't get block grants to municipality or counties do from the federal government. We go to the state and they set up programs. We recently were awarded $24 million in ARPA funds to do some stormwater work up in North County. We're waiting. That's currently, that's actually in place. And we know one of the state senators up north tried to get some work done, and that's currently sitting on the governor's desk. So everything that's available to us and the methodology that's available, we go after. As far as the building, bipartisan infrastructure law, or the Inflation Reduction Act, there's dollars out there. They're not really directed towards entities like us. Some of the dollars have gone into that to buttress the SRF fund. So as more money is available, we always ask for more money than the state's willing to give us. They give us less, and then by the end of the year, they give us whatever's left over. So we take everything that they have available. And that ends up, since the public especially has chosen to do bonding ever since we started this program, there's a big savings there. I will give you, when things were good, we were paying 0.5% interest rate out of our SRF loaning. It's almost free money expended over time. There are some things in the building, the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act that kick in a little bit later. We're sitting on the sideline, talk to the correct partners. We know what the options are. The states notified us of those. But since you're in state government, you know that I work for an organization, national organization that lobbies the federal government and Congress to get this stuff done. Invariably, we wait 18 months before it finally gets to the state. And then we try and inform our state reps, if we possibly can, here's what's coming, here's what it looks like. And so those type of monies are now getting down to the state level. And we've identified what places we can try to participate, and we'll participate and try and get as much money as we can. The only other thing I want to add, about 15 years ago, we started a relationship with the Corps of Engineers. So they are helping with our combined sewer program, which is mostly, it's in the city of St. Louis and 20 square miles of the county. And so they changed their mission so that they could participate in that. Projects that they decide to do with, for instance, their ARPA dollars, their BIL dollars, those types of things. They'll decide to do the projects. If they do that, they then will pay for 75% of the cost of those projects. That's been a very good relationship. Right now, our authorization, and we've got a tagged, is $70 million over the past 10 years. And so that's been a pretty good program. I'm probably missing them. We are tracking it all the time, but we're taking advantage the way us as a special district can. We're taking advantage every time we can of potential outside dollars. Oh. So what was currently overturned is something that's been bounced back like a ping pong ball for the last 20 years. It's what is defined as a water of the United States and whether or not the Clean Water Act applies. the way we do our discharges, nobody will say the Mississippi River is not a water of the US or the Merrimack River is not a water of the US. So as a rule for the major part of work we do, that part does not impact the way environmental regulations are placed against us. You asked two things real quick, new development regs. What was it? Oh, you asked me some. You think I got, okay. Okay, thank you.
That,
Was asked about the possibility of was the other comment. I'm not going to respond to that.
yeah, if I may respond to it, Commissioner.
Please do.
This is the second to last of a first round of hearings. There's a second round of hearings planned beginning July 17th through August 7th, I believe it is. Two of those meetings will be in unincorporated county, one in at the North County Recreation Center. The second will be down in the Melville area, and then there'll be another meeting down in the Fenton area as well. And we will publish those to our website in the next week to 10 days or so. We're finalizing dates and locations, logistics as we speak.
Is there anyone that wishes to speak that has not already done so?
Excuse me, Mr. Stein, there is one more speaker.
Oh,
signed
there's
up.
one.
Sure.
Excuse me.
Andra Elliott.
Hello, thanks for listening to me tonight. I'm Adora Elliott. I live at 11 Runwood Court in Webster Groves. And my question is more regarding stormwater management. My property has been flooded numerous times when we have a heavy rain. And I've been told, I've had Project Clear guys out there numerous times, and I've been told the system is functioning as designed. And the landowner is responsible for providing a route for overland flooding. And I would like to know how that has been determined, if anything by these rate increases will address that situation, and what is considered a reasonable amount of stormwater runoff, and how are we to provide this route for the water? I don't really understand that. I don't know if that's anything that could be answered here, if it's too specific, but how is that going to be impacted by the rate increase, or will it? I have suffered more than 25% damage to the value of my home. The very first night that I spent in it, I was flooded with 3.5 feet of water. I no longer have a finished basement. All my personal belongings got destroyed. My exterior landscaping was destroyed. It's happened several times since then, and nobody's responsible because it's an act of God that made it rain so much. And I was told I'm not in a floodplain. I don't have flood insurance. How are people like me and Ms. Phillips supposed to deal with this? And why should we continue to have our properties adversely impacted, but yet our rates keep going up? Question. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Holscher, would you like to respond?
So our staffs respond to a lot of issues, so I'm going to give you where they stand. You're right. The system has been designed since we're using the return 15, 20, 25-year storms. They're set up to match the natural systems in the area. So they're set to, that's the kind when they say a regular storm. There is not a system here in the city, in the state, in the country, when you see on TV, or I'm older, so I watch TV, but whatever you see, when you see all the flooding going on, those systems are set up exactly the same way, and you get that kind of flooding. So I'm going to restate what our field staffs have told you. Will this program for the stormwater that we're talking about, will this address your kind of situation? It will. The plan right now is to raise $34 million a year. And we believe, based on what we've identified based on the public, there's about $700 million of issues. So the spending is going to have to be prioritized. The situation you're explaining can be addressed. Now, The way to address it, and this is the hardest part of the discussion we've had with certain individuals, the area is going to have a discussion about whether homes are where they should be to begin with. If we knew what we knew now, should there be a home there? And so one of the solutions, the reason I'm saying this is one of the solutions in a lot of places, and we do this with our wastewater program. If we can possibly on the wastewater program build facilities and folks who are flooding or they're not in mapped floodplains like in your case because it's a small area, but they still flood. We try and build those facilities which can take that flooding in those areas and move people out. Oh. Yes. And Representative, that was the other one of your points that I was going to address. So under MSD, since MSD has been in charge, and I'll address what it is right now. If somebody does a redevelopment that increases flows, we require them to put revisions on the property that hold the flow back so there's no more runoff at any one time coming off their property than there would have as if it was undeveloped. So that works for new properties. A lot of the problem is just everything that's already there. And also, especially when there isn't anything that's built to handle a 500-year storm. When you get a 500-year storm, which unfortunately we're seeing, depending on where you live, we're seeing 7 or 8 small pop-up or the entire service area happening a year. They will cause the area to flood. So we do have requirements to make sure that occurs, that they don't increase flows except in the most extreme events. So every new development, the issue we really have is there's an awful lot of development out there that didn't have those kind of rules before MSD took over, before MSD became responsible, and they're sitting there right now. Yep. So we want, and you're right, the problem's big. The problem is huge and it's a lot of impact. We've been trying, I've been at least director of engineering since 2003. It's the 4th time we've tried to provide some kind of funding. This will be the 4th time. We need a fund so we can start doing something and start resolving the issue. For whatever reason, it's an item that can never quite get over the hump. We wanted to do it this time. I want to make sure I'm telling you though, I'm not saying your problem is going to get resolved on year 1. Again, if you want to see the issues we know about that are prioritized, they're in the rate proposal. You're right. We do have to prioritize the amount of money that comes in. Right. I don't know, and I think you understand this. We can't raise $700 million today and start taking care of everything. We do it. You're absolutely right. There will have to be prioritization and we'll have to work our way down the list. That is true. But we really need to get started somewhere for everybody. So, and I do understand it. I really do. We talk to folks in your situation all the time, and we want to get something in place that we can start taking care of it and hopefully leverage whatever other resources are available throughout the area to really get people focused on this type of issue and doing something about it. But the issue is going to be, and this is MSD's opinion with having gone through this for a while, I've been through it for 25 years, there are places we should not have homes. That is really the best place to start. Pardon me? And quite on the wastewater program, we do. We don't have any stormwater dollars to do that right now. So that will be part of the program on, unfortunately, a prioritized basis. If this goes through, we will be doing that. That's got to be part of the solution. So MSD's process follows the federal guidelines for acquisition and relocation. So what we'll do is, what we do throughout the program, we take the value of the properties in the general area of similar size. So in other words, the fact that it's flooded does not impact the cost. The whole point of the program is to give you the funds and the opportunity to move into equivalent type housing as far as space, room, that type of stuff, and provide the funding for that. Whether it was flooded or not, doesn't matter. So we will provide the funding that's available to provide the same type of amenities at the price that's in the area for you to be moving into equivalent housing, whatever that is. That's the price we calculate. And then, so for your damage, well, no, not your damaged home, your home with the type of, not damaged, but as though it's not damaged, I guess is the way to put it. MSD, then what we do is when we have those properties, we tear them down, leave it as vacant property, do something else to hold more water if we can, and then put an easement over top of it so nobody comes back and redevelops again and gets caught in that problem again. And so in the places we can do it, that's what we do. That would be the method we would go after these problems, starting at the top of the list if we get this funding. You can blame us for not being successful in getting the public to vote us a rate, and that is our fault. Well, and it's hard. I will tell you, since you asked and we're having this discussion, that's one of the things we talk about all the time. It's hard to see the personal benefit until there's funding to be able to do a program to show you the personal benefit. This is not you. When we started disconnecting people's downspouts, nobody wanted to touch it. Then they saw what was going on and people said, oh, that's great. And everybody wanted us to disconnect their downspouts from their wastewater drain. So our experience has been, once we start the program and people see what it is, we can be successful. You're right. We've never provided this. Nobody knows what it looks like. We'd like to get started.
Thank you, Mr. Helsher.
Commissioner, those are the last of the speakers that have signed up.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak that has not already done so? Problem solved. Okay. The next public hearing is scheduled for Thursday, June 29th. I believe that's tomorrow at 7 p.m. The hearing will be held in the council chamber at the City of Chesterfield City Hall. The address for Chesterfield City Hall is 690 Chesterfield Parkway West, Chesterfield, Missouri, 63017. This public hearing is adjourned. Thank you all.